Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We're ready for the event.
Washington Post, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is the Washington Post. How do you hear me?
Washington Post is Station. Chris, we read you real loud and clear. Welcome aboard again. Glad to talk to you.
Glad to talk to you guys. Thanks for taking a moment. I appreciate it. Bob, I guess I'll just start with you and get right into it. Just curious, from your standpoint, what's been the most memorable moment so far? Coming through the hatch, the spacewalk, just wondering if you've got a highlight for us on your mission so far.
Well, certainly the highlight for both Doug and I was initial arrival at Space Station, coming through the hatch again and being on board after several years of working on a new spacecraft and the shuttles being retired. But after that, it would have to be the spacewalk. Chris and I had a great event last Friday and a wonderful view of Dragon. It was just awesome to be able to look back and snap a picture. And I think we got a good daylight shot that kind of showed HTV and Dragon all out there on the front of Space Station. It was pretty awesome.
Well, speaking of Dragon, I was just curious how you're feeling about the ride home and what you'll be looking for from the spacecraft, as obviously it's a test mission. Just sort of curious about also some of the technical aspects of it, if you have any sense of your top velocity, what the weight of the spacecraft will be on reentry, and, the temperatures that you'll be seeing.
Those are all good questions, Chris, and we'll have to dig into kind of the facts behind it. I think Doug and I have been focused on the mission on board Space Station and trying to make sure that we took care of Chris and got him ready to be alone again, or at least without U.S. OS help on this end. We're, of course, looking forward to the return. And the details of that in terms of velocities and temperature, it's basically the same energy we put in, the same speeds we needed to achieve in order to get into low Earth orbit and get docked to Space Station are what we're going to need to slowly slow down. And it doesn't take much to start dipping back into the atmosphere and coming back down. As far as the weight of the vehicle, I know that the Hawthorne team is managing very carefully where it's not so much the weight as it is the center of gravity is, so that we get good performance coming through the atmosphere. And Doug and I will be very carefully packing the individual items exactly where they tell us to, so that we've got good center of gravity location so that we get good aero performance as we come back through the atmosphere. I think we'll get a lot of those details in the next probably 3 weeks or so. Right around the time that we wrap up what should be the fourth EVA to finish the battery swap outs. So there's just more to come on that, but we're definitely looking forward to it.
And Chris, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the work you have planned with Bob and Doug while you still have them on the station. What's to come in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, we still have the Japanese cargo vehicle HTV attached with us, and just today, I think this morning, we completely finished the removal of the arriving cargo, and we will start now filling it with all of the trash that needs to be disposed of. So that it doesn't sound very exciting, but it's a very important step for us, is keeping resupplied and getting rid of our old experiments and, of course, trash. So that's the lion's share of activities. Of course, there's science that's going on all the time. In fact, Doug this morning was installing a new experiment that the three of us will be cycling through activities on very soon. So those are sort of in the background all the time, every day. One of the three of us, or multiple of the three of us, are dabbling in those activities, and then Bob and I, of course, the balance of our time is filled up with EVA prep, and as soon as we hang up with you, we have a conference with the ground team that's kind of coordinating all of those activities. So that's really fills up our month, believe it or not. We are steamrolling right into July right now, and before we know it, the series of EVAs will be over, the HTV will depart, and so will my two crewmates.
And Bob, it looks like I have time for one more quick one here. I wanted to ask you about splashdown, first time for American astronauts since 1975 landing in the ocean. I wonder, your thoughts on that, what you're looking forward to, and if you have any, things that stand out as a potential concern for you.
I think, Chris, you hit on the probably the biggest area of concern is just how long it's been since humans have done this on the U.S. side, splashing down in the water and then being recovered. One of the luxuries that we do have is that the SpaceX team brings cargo missions back from the International Space Station. They've done that many times at this point, and they've recovered those capsules pretty successfully and managed to get the timeline relatively short so that we expect to be back on the ship within an hour of splashdown. And that's the thing I'm probably most looking forward to and going to be appreciative, I'm sure, after bobbing around in the ocean. I guess no pun intended for me bobbing around in the ocean, but after bouncing around in there, being deconditioned after a couple of months, and just how we'll physically feel, I think that's going to be a bit of something we're going to be really ready to get out of that capsule, or really ready to be on the ship after that happens. And I think I wouldn't call it nervousness, but one of the areas that both Doug and I really need to make sure that we're prepared for is that if something doesn't go as smoothly as is expected with that recovery operation, and we end up in that capsule for a little bit longer, that's going to be challenging for us physically. And there are some activities that we can do to, facilitate things communications-wise, but they require actions, and so that means that we need to be on top of our game, both physically and mentally, as we go through that time in the water. And hopefully it's short like they plan, but we need to be prepared in case it isn't.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the Washington Post portion of the event. Please stand by for voice check from the Associated Press.
Station, this is the Associated Press. How do you hear me?
Hello, Marcia. We hear you loud and clear. Welcome to the space station.
Well, thanks. Talking to you from the Kennedy Space Center. I'll start with you, Bob. I was just wondering how the checks are going with the Dragon up there right now, and are you seeing anything that you might change or recommend when the Dragon is carrying 4 people up on the next flight? I was just curious as your thoughts.
The good questions, Marcia. The SpaceX vehicle, the Dragon Endeavour, our ship, has performed really well. I think they had a lot of predicts in terms of how it would behave with respect to temperature, how it would behave with respect to its response to radiation for the computers and electronics that's on board, and that's really proceeded as expected. And I think that's the thing that really gives Doug and I continued confidence in the vehicle, is that it's matching the engineering predictions for all of those things. And I think that we're looking forward to that continued performance.
Are you ready to come back?
I think as far as anything that we would change. Sorry, Marcia, I needed Chris to remind me the other question about what we might change on board. I think the things that we've really looked at is that we focused on the Demo 2 mission, getting 2 crew members up here to the International Space Station and making sure vehicle performance was good. And there are some things that as 4 crew members need to be on board that we'll want to manage a little bit differently. And so Doug and I have a lot of ideas with respect to that in terms of how food is organized, or how we get water on board the vehicle, or how we manage where each person will be through the free flight time as you arrive towards station. And so, we're just going to think about what the next crews would need, being this, they're just a little bit bigger. Twice as many people in the same amount of space doesn't quite just make it twice as hard. It could make it 4 times as hard or 8 times as hard.
Well, as I'm sure you know, the pandemic is hitting Florida and Texas pretty hard right now, especially Houston. I'm wondering how your families are coping down there, and how are you coping up in space, and is that sort of like an extra layer of worry and anxiety for you as you go about your business every day, worrying about your families, friends, and everybody back home?
Well, of course, we're following along very closely with the news for not only our friends and family in Houston and in Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but all over the country, and following along with the world events. But the interesting thing, as I think about, to answer your question, we on board didn't have the feeling of getting over the hump in this kind of second wave, since we're looking from afar. So I think that's the difference for me anyways. I don't want to speak for Bob and Doug, but for me, I've just been kind of this steady state concerned for folks, and didn't really have a let my guard down type feel, because I wasn't living in the environment. Not that I'm being more vigilant than anybody else. I'm just saying that up here, our daily routine doesn't involve quite so strict measures, or really any measures at all. We just go about our time. So I didn't have a kind of a second wave type feel that I think is going on right now for a lot of folks, and that's what's making it quite so hard. But we definitely are concerned greatly.
Also, I don't know if I've ever covered a spacewalk where the spacewalkers were 2 hours ahead of schedule, like as happened with yours Friday. Did you feel like you were really hurrying out there? How did you move so fast? And Chris, I'm wondering, any idea yet on how your wrist mirror came off, and do you have a spare for Wednesday?
Well, we do have spare wrist mirrors for sure, and I'll tell you, Marcia, that was a real bummer for me. I had no idea how it happened. The wrist mirrors are on your wrist kind of tight. I mean, they're on there pretty snug, so for something, it had to have been a small tether or piece of metal, or there's a metal a tether attachment on near the airlock handrail, and maybe that just slid right in the perfect seam and slid it off. I don't know. I just happened to glance down and I saw this reflecting thing disappearing into the darkness, and that was the last I saw of it. So we do have spares. That's good. And in terms of getting ahead, every spacewalk, you're one stuck bolt away from being 2 hours behind. And I think we just sort of got lucky that we were on the front side of that one stuck. There was no stuck bolts. All the bolts worked. And I think that's a tribute to how much thought has gone into these particular bolts and analysis on how to manage them well, and focusing a lot on the bolts, because that's really what the task is with batteries, is driving them. And if you have a sticky mechanism, we would not have been 2 hours ahead. Now, granted, I think we both have a fair amount of experience with batteries in the pool, certainly, and up here as well. So we're familiar with the handling characteristics of holding a big 400-pound thing, and how we needed to work together. So that part just worked out really well, that we were lucky. One interesting thing Bob and I just realized is we have never been in the NBL together in all of our decade and a half time at the Johnson Space Center, which is ironic. Our very first time in EMUs is outside on a real spacewalk. So anyway, everything just lined up perfect.
And before I say goodbye, one last quick question. The Russians are proposing to fly a tourist and have that tourist do a spacewalk. And Chris, you know better than anybody the dangers of spacewalking from your last time. In any event, is that a good idea, sending tourists out on a spacewalk, even if they've got some sort of training? And Godspeed and good luck.
Well, thank you, Marcia. I think it could be really challenging for a tourist to go on a spacewalk, and so I'm confident that our Russian partners, as well as any U.S. participants, would really focus on making sure that person would have the appropriate training. Now, the tourist category may really apply to some of the other aspects of station activities, maybe less training with respect to rack transfers or doing, maintenance on board the International Space Station. But I'm confident that the team is going to insist that person have the appropriate training, and I think any person that was in that tourist category, they would also want to have the appropriate training to be able to operate in the EMU in that little spaceship that you take out, when you do a spacewalk. I don't think they would feel comfortable if they did one MBL run. They would recognize that you need to treat it with respect and be prepared for the space environment.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the AP portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from NBC News.
All right, Space Station, this is Lester Holt from NBC News. Great to see both of you. Congratulations on the successful spacewalk on Friday. Bob, let me begin with you. Can you describe to our audience what it's like to work with these heavy components, the Earth spinning beneath you, and working in this weightless atmosphere?
Well, Lester, welcome aboard the International Space Station. Both Chris and I had a wonderful time on that spacewalk. Just one of the things you do have to be prepared for is just how big those batteries that we were changing out actually are. We both commented on their weight or their mass, being something that you had to be really careful with. We didn't want to treat them harshly because those were the batteries that we needed for the next several years on board Space Station. And if you let them get out of control, they can smash things like your finger or sensitive parts of Space Station. And so we just took it slow and steady, and were really careful and tried not to damage anything as we accomplished the swap out. And luckily for us, things worked well, and that all went smoothly.
And Chris, can you explain to our kids in our audience the importance of the work going on aboard the space station?
Well, certainly, Lester. We, when I first became an astronaut, there was a famous experienced astronaut named John Young, and I remember sitting in one meeting, and he said, "Single planet species don't survive," and I didn't really understand what he was talking about. But now, 15 years later, I understand that the work that we're doing now on board the International Space Station is really setting us up to understand how to live off of the planet. And we've been doing that for 20 years. We've had people on the International Space Station, and who knows how people will be living on Mars or in other space stations in another 20, 40 years when the kids who are watching this program turn into astronauts just like Bob and I. And that's really, really exciting to think about those technical possibilities. And all of that, the important legwork, so to speak, the engineering and the technical answers those problems are being solved right now on board the International Space Station.
You guys have a unique view, certainly, into the future. It's amazing to hear and see some of the images that you send back. We've got some questions from the kids I hope you guys don't mind answering. Here's one from our friend Jerry, who is a big space buff. Here it is. If you could ask the two astronauts one question, what would it be, Jerry?
Well, I'd say, how do you go to the bathroom when you're out in the black with the starred space, not in the spaceship?
All right, Bob, I'm going to let you tackle this one.
So I think the question was, how do we go to the bathroom when we're not inside of the spaceship? And I guess that refers to our spacewalks. And I guess there's not any delicate way to say this. We both wore adult diapers, and just in case we needed to use them while we were out during the spacewalk. I think sometimes you have to use them even before you get out the hatch. The process of getting out for a spacewalk takes a long time, and so you just got to be prepared for it. But it's the best view for a bathroom anywhere.
I can imagine. So we appreciate watching you guys, but we can't help but notice from time to time something floats by you. Can you introduce us to your mascot?
So the mascot for Doug and I and our spacecraft Endeavour was called Trimmer, and Trimmer's right here with us. It's a small dinosaur that our son selected to go on the trip with us. The SpaceX vehicle previously that came aboard that did not have actually a crew with it, just came unmanned, actually brought little Earthy, and so we brought our Apatosaurus Trimmer to the space station to reunite with Earthy, and we hope to bring Earthy and Trimmer back to Earth with us when we come back here in a few weeks.
That is terrific. You guys are having too much fun up there. Fellas, thank you so much for spending some time with us and answering some of our questions. Continue to have a safe mission. We look forward to seeing you back on Earth.
Thank you very much, Lester. We appreciate being with you. And hello, kids.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes our event as we count down to 20 continuous years of humans living and working on the International Space Station.